get into the big story and all that jazz, I want to give background. My ex and I dated and broke up 2 years ago. I graduated in June of this year, and my ex, a grade ahead of me, yeah, I've been pestered enough about going after older women by my family. I get it. Graduated in June of 2015. In her senior year, our friendship from before we dated began to deteriorate, and this was only really repaired recently because of this experience. I ended up falling into a depression over it, but I've begun to get better. Anyways, one day, in about late November 2014, she left the lunch table me and our group of friends sat at in a huff, after being disturbed and angered about the discussion of demons. She never returned to the table, and I ended up moving to the other lunchroom with her after an unrelated incident. The day after the former incident, I overheard her talking to another 2015 graduate about her being deeply disturbed about the talk of ghosts and demons. Being an avid fan of stuff like ghost adventures and as well as a firm believer in the paranormal, this worried me. Due to our issues, though, I never followed up on it. Until now. We met each other again for the first time since a random chance meeting at a grocery store in February. She's single right now, by the way. One of our mutual friends invited us to the birthday party and we began talking and really getting along again. We played Pokemon Go and ended up watching a movie with the rest of our friends. Yes, we are all nerds. Every single one. We generally had an awesome time, and for the first time in over 2 years, my life began to feel complete again. Towards the end of the party, when we were alone, I decided to ask her about the demon incident. By now, she had been drinking a bit, so she was a bit more loosened. I don't drink, at least not now, since I'm a volunteer firefighter, and as soon as you drink, you can't go on calls for the next 4 to 6 hours. Her mood immediately went from happy to somber. She asked me how the hell I remembered what happened. I told her that the incident worried me back then, but that I probably got worked up over nothing. She simply told me, "Oh, you were not worked up over nothing." That's when she told me that her house had been haunted ever since her and her family moved up from New York City in 5th grade. Until about 2010, 2011, the hauntings were relatively benign. The worst that happened was her being awoken by the ghost of a friendly old lady that used to live there until she died in 2005. Apparently, the ghost was comforting and kind. In 2010 and 2011, her life began to turn upside down. She began to question her sexuality before she ended up coming out to her parents as bi. Luckily, they accepted it. She had to hide from her asshole ex-boyfriend that eventually found out the truth and broke her heart over it. She got rejected by a close female friend. This was before I met her in late 2012. It was when the other ghosts came along. First, it was random doors opening and closing at all hours of the night. Then she began having vivid nightmares that she had never had before, including one where a demonic entity had put a razor blade in her hand and made her slash her wrists. She is never actually harmed in real life, though. Several people we both know have, sadly. Next, her mother was pushed onto the floor when she was home alone. Eventually, it subsided in 2014, but sure enough, in late 2014, this shit began again. She woke up several times with scratches on her back, all in the same pattern. 3 long scratches from her neck to her shoulder blades. Her father and her both saw a shadow move from the basement to the upstairs one night while watching a movie. One of the saddest incidents, though, involved the ghost of the old lady. In February 2015, just before she was about to leave home to perform at her school's talent show, she heard what sounded like something attacking an old lady in her room. She was too afraid to enter, and her parents were picking up the dress she was to wear from a dry cleaner's. She told me that the voice of the attacker was deep and sounded bone-chillingly evil. She said she knew the victim was the same old lady ghost that had treated her nicely because of her distinctive voice. Apparently, she was a Polish Jew who left from war-torn Europe after surviving a Nazi death camp. Her husband passed in 1999 and she passed 6 years later. 3 years after that, my ex's family moved in. She had a very thick Polish accent in life and death. In December 2015, her mother was pushed down the stairs by an unseen force, causing her to break her left foot. After that, things once again subsided. Now, though, things are starting up again. Just 2 weeks after the party, her best friend was touched on the neck by an unseen force at her house. Then 3 days later, she too was touched on the neck. She also heard footsteps going away from her right afterwards. I sense If this is left unchecked again, the results could be disastrous for her and her family. I'm going to admit something now, instead of revealing it in some climatic scene cliche, and it's that I still love her. She was my first, and to this day only girlfriend, and she was the first person I truly loved unconditionally. I'm not doing this hoping that she'll just take me back, rip her clothes off and go to town as they say it in safe for work terms, or some cliche like that as they do in horror movies at the end. I'm doing this because I genuinely fear for her life and her parents' lives. I've recruited 2 of my friends, one of whom is in the middle in terms of belief, and the other of which being a skeptic to help us. Her best friend, who is going to undergo top surgery in the next 3 weeks, trans man, good luck by the way to you dude, is also helping us. His parents are supplying us with a few cameras since they run a store that sells cameras and stuff. They rock. The 5 of us are going to investigate her house. Her parents, coincidentally, happen to be going on a cruise with their friends for the week. They've given us full permission for this. I'm in her house right now. We just got done setting up our 2 static cameras, one in her room and one in the basement. We also have 5 night vision cameras, 2 recorders, as well as our phones as recorders and flashlights. We go into lockdown mode at 9. My skeptic best friend is guarding our base in the kitchen. Wish us luck. Okay. As I was typing that last part, my ex just came screaming from upstairs saying that something knocked down the static camera in her room in front of her as she turned it on. She had her camera with her recording the whole thing, and we're gonna replay it. I'll type below this paragraph what I see. Well, I just finished watching it, and it definitely shows a static camera getting pushed. She did not touch it at all when it fell to the floor, and the tripod it was on was completely stable. However, that my ex apparently didn't hear, it sounded very low-pitched and growly. My skeptic best friend slash base guard is starting to question his skepticism, needless to say. My other best friend says he thinks the voice said stop in a harsh manner. Already we are getting evidence and we haven't even locked down yet. Well, I'm going to put this up. Once again, wish us luck.